All right. Just gonna give it a sec. Make sure it's all started here. All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our latest video. And in this video, we're going to be talking about programs. Why we are running programs, why we are not all already living the Enlightenment lifestyle. And yes, I'm going to be diving deep into why we have programs, where our programs come from, why our programs are not conspiracy theory, why there's no like great plan as we kind of like to think about it, but rather the fact that we've kind of just gotten to where we are because of human evolution, and what we can do when uh, our constitution and our way of being and what we need to be healthy and happy and supported in this world don't align with the current programs of society. So, because this is a big part of this, is that, again, so we're going to get deep into this. But first thing first is just to understand that number one thing, we were talking about the Enlightenment lifestyle in my last video. And the Enlightenment lifestyle is simply a way of living and a way of being, right? You've heard the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And this is very, very true in the sense that, like, the enlightenment process and those four phases of enlightenment. So the oneness with all things, the relationship with God, where you feel like you can commune with the greater intelligence, that you feel like you now have access to information that is pertinent for you to understand reality, you to understand yourself, like from the most practical, like I can go inside and do a meditation and get an answer about what I should eat that day to help heal this problem, or get an insight about what I should do in this relationship that actually helps it get better, whatever. That from that most practical to like to feeling that commune with, like, oh, okay, this is why the world is the way that it is, or this is why the cosmos is the way that it is, or you can kind of have that experience, right? So we can have that, and then recognizing our oneness with humanity, recognizing our oneness with everything on this planet, recognizing that, oh, it's not just me, and that there's a whole system here, and then recognizing that there is a structure to reality, and that part of living an enlightenment lifestyle is continually recognizing that you are here to evolve into yourself. That you, just like an oak tree, just like a rose, just like a bird, just like a lion, have a genetic potential, have a program within you that wants to express, and that expression is your growth path. Yes, that it's you continuing to discover who you are and to develop who you are, and then to express what you've discovered, and then to nourish that, and then to discover more about who you are, to express that, to develop more about who you are, to express that there's this continual unfolding of you. And that's really what feels good in life. Okay, so ultimately understanding that, again, that in order to live this self-expression, having these higher awarenesses, having this connection to God, having this connection to reality, being able to figure things out for yourself is very important. And that, again, someone who is enlightened, it's not a one and done. Yes, it's now someone who lives in a way that's very different from how everyone else is living, because their motivations are different. After these enlightenment experiences, you're no longer tied into consensus reality of the illusions of what society tells us is going to make us happy, and what success is, and what where fulfillment comes from. And you're no longer tied into truth is held in humanity. You then start to understand that truth is held in reality, and that you are connected to reality, and you can find truth for yourself, and you start to live your life of self-expression. in alignment with reality versus in alignment with consensus reality, in alignment with the program. Okay, that's what an enlightenment lifestyle is. It's not I got it and now I'm enlightened and then that's it. It's, okay, I'm here to be me. Now, what does that actually mean? And then you start to have the tools and the awareness and the capacity to figure that out, to really find yourself. And so an enlightened person can be someone who develops some great technology. An enlightened person can be someone who is literally a farmer and has a family, and that's just what they do. Someone who's a writer, someone who's a mother. It's gonna look different on all of us. Because again, a big part of it is you expressing your potential. And we are all different. We all have a different potential. We all have a different, this is what I need. These are the foundational things that I need in order to be nourished so that I can present as myself, so that I can grow into myself, right? So if we think of it like what a rose needs in terms of soil, sunlight, nutrients, and all these things is very different than what seaweed needs in order to express their genetic potential, right? So there's a very, very practical elements of awakening, right? And a lot of people get caught up in the idea that to be awakened, and people with programming too, get caught up in this idea that you're gonna realize it's all an illusion, and that this body is an illusion, or this reality is an illusion, and it's all like I think people have taken the Matrix a little bit too literally. Like we're like actually gonna wake up and realize that all of this is just a projection and none of it is real and it's not happening and there's some other reality that's happening. And it's like, okay, that's kind of real, but again, it's metaphorical. It's not like there actually aren't buildings and there actually aren't people and there's this ship in the center of the earth. Like that's not what's happening. Okay, so we gotta kind of not take it so literally. But this understanding that what we need to thrive, what we need to be able to express our genetic potential is something only we can figure out for ourselves. And there are programs and there's conditioning that tell us this is what it is going to take to survive and to thrive that are wrong. And that's what the program is, and that's where the illusion is, okay? So we're all here to express our genetic potential. That's what an enlightenment lifestyle is. When you have connection to what people call God or the universe, or I just call reality, it is very mystical, okay? There are absolutely components of it where you go into meditation and you feel a lot of things and you see geometric patterns and lights and colors and you go into the void and you realize that you are not your body and you have out-of-body experiences and you can feel other people's bodies and like all of these things can happen or they might not, and it's kind of the powers and the special experiences again aren't really it, okay? Those things are fun and they're amazing, and of course we love the novel experience, but the main part of the awakening is that it actually grounds you into reality. It doesn't take you out of reality. It brings you into it in a more grounded and integrated way. It makes it so that you can live life fully, like really live life fully, because you know that this isn't all there is, because you see that you have more and more access to the greater awareness, the greater consciousness, the greater whatever that is. So the enlightenment lifestyle is still very chop wood, carry water. It's just you understanding that you are now going to live learning the laws of reality, that you're going to continue to experience pain and pleasure, which are just the messengers of the boundaries of reality, and you're gonna understand that your consciousness, your life, your being you is expanding reality. You are literally expanding consciousness itself because you are a part of consciousness and you are an anomaly. You have never happened before and you will never happen again. And therefore, you are an addition to reality itself. So we are never going to know it all. We are never going to have ourselves completely figured out. We are never going to have ourselves completely expressed. We are never going to have the universe completely figured out because it's not done. It's continuing to expand as long as we're in this time-space reality. Yeah? We're not in universal perspective where there are no boundaries and therefore there is no time. And it's all happened and none of it's happened. Right? We're in this relative experience. And so you live this relative experience fully with an open hand, knowing it's not everything. And like I say, we then get into the business of alignment, of understanding the laws of reality and how they function and how we can best live to support our own growth. Because as we do that, because we are one with everything, right? You're going to understand this. You're going to have an actual experience of this oneness with all things, that you're going to feel in your own body that there is no separation between yourself and everyone else. So that which is truly good for you is truly good for the whole. That which is destructive to you is destructive for the whole. And then that's where you start to really recognize your programs. Because what is a program? So when we talk about, so why are we all not living an enlightenment lifestyle? Why are we all not just following our bliss, just following what feels good to us, just doing that thing that calls to us, walking our paths, and following our joy? Because that's technically what it's like when you're enlightened. You're following your feelings, you're following your joy, you're following your internal guidance system as you observe reality, right? So you do what you're going to do, you observe the cause and effect, you learn from that. So what did that mean? If I just did something, I followed my bliss, and it created something that was painful. That doesn't mean I did something wrong. That means I just learned there's the limits of my understanding of reality. So what was it that caused that pain? We get curious, we get creative, and we get compassionate with ourselves. That's what it's like to live the enlightenment lifestyle, is no matter what happens, we're curious, creative, and compassionate. So therefore our perception is opening every single time we have an experience instead of closing down. Because one of the main programs we run is that pain is bad. Pain means we are bad. Pain means something we have done something wrong. And this puts us into fight or flight, which closes down our perception. And so then we cannot understand why we are in pain. We can't learn, and then we can't do something different because we're in fight or flight, where our nervous systems just take control and force us to do the same thing we've always done. So again, why are we not all just living that enlightenment lifestyle? If it's so natural and sounds so easy, just follow your feelings, notice pain and pleasure, learn from pain and pleasure, adjust. That's it. We're not doing it because we're programmed. And we're programmed for a very, very, very good reason. So the programs that we have as a humanity all boil down, again, not to a nefarious group who's trying to control the world, not even saying that that doesn't exist. Okay? It's more complicated than this. Not because we're being intentionally held back from that which is good for us. Not because there's some secret plan to keep us disconnected from ourselves. It really comes down to humans being ignorant about what we need to survive. Humans being ignorant about what is reality. And the actual evolutionary place that most humans are at on our planet right now. Our programs are fully based on what the aggregate okay, the majority of the world thinks is required for survival right now. The conditioning we were all brought up in, so what your parents taught you is the right and the wrong way to be, what society is saying is the right and wrong way to be, the good and bad thing to do, the right and wrong, all of this is all the amalgamation of what your current society, wherever you live in the world, believes is what is required for survival. So now this can mean that the people who are in power, from their level of consciousness, believe that in order for them to survive, they have to dominate and control others. And that is a very low level of consciousness. So when we look at these kind of like dictators all around the world and these seemingly like evil people, we have to understand how human psychology develops. And that not all of us are at the same place at the same time in our awareness. And that this goes deeper than the intellect. This goes far deeper than the intellect into our capacity to feel. So we as a human race, as a human species, are not all at the same place on our evolutionary path. We are not all in the same awareness. And now again, whether you believe in past lives and you think we come to our level of awareness because of the work we've done in past lives, that's fine. You want to believe that. Sometimes all the way to just believing that we just are evolution. We just plopped here and we're all different because genetic variation exists. And some things just were created or born, evolved more than other things. Or we can see that it's like a very complex mix of things, that like there's absolutely the Maslow's hierarchy of needs with humanity. And the closer you get to the top, so the closer you get to having had food your whole life, having had shelter your whole life, having had some education your whole life, having had some form of self-expression your whole life, the more secure you have been mentally and emotionally and physically, the more likely it is that you're going to be evolved to a higher level of consciousness than someone born in a country where there's no food and war all the time. You see? Because if all of us, every human being on the planet, is simply like everything else, nature, and nature wants to express its potential, the more of our needs we have met, the more of our potential we can express. And the more complex we can become. And understanding too, that the higher we go up the hierarchy of needs, the more complex the need becomes. So like food and water, that's pretty basic. We've got that kind of figured out in the sense that that's like a basic thing. And then the love and compassion, the understanding, the creative expression, these things get more and more complex, figuring out exactly what we need and how we need it to be so that we can be self-expressed is more and more complicated as we go up. So we are all at different levels of consciousness. And all throughout human history, again, we need to remember that the main programs that we as a humanity are running that block us from being able to commune with reality itself. Okay? So rather than communing with reality, so when you have a problem, you feel what it feels like to have that problem. Like this is the Enlightenment lifestyle essentially. You're having your problem, you're having your pain, you feel the pain. You really get good at learning how to have that information. Like you understand that feeling is information and you allow it to run through your body. You feel your way through it and it processes through your being. And then it will feed your intellect and awareness. And you will also be, when you're in pain or having a problem, rather than shutting down and looking through all the things that you already know and trying to figure out what you've already done or what something from what you already know in order to solve your problem, you're going to open up to observe your reality in a way that you've never observed it before. You're going to open up to seeing what you've never seen before. You're going to open up to knowing what you didn't know before. You're going to be in this situation of understanding that if there's a problem, there is a solution. And that solution is going to come as something I've never known before. So when we talk about stepping into the unknown and really getting comfortable with admitting where we don't know, and instead of shutting down, we open up. This is how we commune with reality. And then we don't live these lives of feeling like we're going to be stuck in pain or suffering forever, because we know that we have access to new information, so then we can take a new action step, which again is counter to our programming, to do something we've never done before and that we may have seen no one else do before, and to do it anyways, and maybe fail, maybe still have pain, and be willing to do that because you know you're going to learn something from that, and then that'll be more information, which will lead to more new steps, which will lead to more information and more new steps, and then you start to put things together and your life just becomes this continual unfolding. That is what it looks like to live the Enlightenment lifestyle. But our programming, right? The reason we don't live like that, again, is because forever and ever and ever, number one, survival came from working together as a humanity. We were not individuals who could survive on our own. So in our childhoods, we were not individuals that could survive on our own. We've talked about this lots and lots and lots. We were fully and completely dependent upon our caregivers to provide everything for us. We were in a codependent relationship with our caregivers. Therefore, we learned the rules for what is right and wrong, good and bad, how we have to be from them, not from reality. So the farther away your caregiver's sense of right and wrong, good and bad, up and down, was from your actual needs as a human being, the more programmed you are. Yes? The more your nervous system is programmed that I have to do this thing to survive. But real reality and my real feelings are telling me something different. And in order to survive your childhood, you had to shut down anything that got you rejected from your caregivers, because you were not interacting with real reality. You were interacting with the reality of your household. So this is the birth of self-hate. This is the birth of self-loathing. This is the birth of the split self. This is the birth of these parts we have shamed and rejected and we don't understand, and the shadow and all of these things. It was, what was it in you that got rejected, shamed, abandoned by your caregivers that is authentic to you and needed to grow, that didn't get to grow? What is it in you that you had to become, that you had to develop, that you had to pretend was a part of you when it actually felt bad or it didn't actually work for you? What did you have to do that went against your ultimate self-expression in order to survive the relative self-expression, survival situation of your childhood? And then that is exactly how it is in society, right? That all throughout human history, humans could not survive on their own. We needed a tribe. And cultural values, tribal values, cultural values, societal values, where did all these things come from? They came from, first, in the very beginning, what it took to survive and who could provide that best. Okay, so again, back in the day when we were all living in tribes, out in nature, we had to hunt, we had to work the land together, we needed to build shelter together, we had to protect ourselves from predators together. Who was going to be the most valued? The strong, physically able men. Why? Because they were more capable of providing for the tribe what the tribe needed to survive. So we wonder where the patriarchy came from. Maybe even toxic masculinity. It didn't start anywhere near where we are right now. That program started with males being able to dominate because they could control the resources. They simply could overpower. They could go hunt and say, okay, I'm not going to give this food to the tribe unless the tribe agrees to give me 4 women to have sex with instead of 1. Because I want to spread my seed. That's my genetic potential. And because I am your source for food, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell me no? I'll cut your head off. You see? We were at a level of consciousness during those times where that was reasonable. We were all in a low level of awareness. Okay, and yes, absolutely, indigenous tribes and all these things learned to work together. They learned to commune with nature. They had spiritual practices. They had all these things that seem like almost higher consciousness than we are right now. And we have to understand that every level of consciousness has its truth, has its thing that needs to be carried on to the next level. And in some ways, we have lost touch with the wisdom that was known several phases ago. But that doesn't mean that several phases ago was more enlightened or more aware than we are. They just had a piece of information we have forgotten. Okay? But ultimately, where social programming came from, the fact that we are socially programmed, the fact that what we are being told is reality and how we need to survive and what's going to equal happiness is wrong, just comes from a whole human history of people not understanding how reality actually functions. We of only understanding our reality from our perception and our perspective and our limited experience of what it takes to survive. So all throughout, again, human history, we've had the understanding and the awareness that resources are what help us survive. The more access you have to resource, the better your chances of survival are. And if you're going to express your potential, if you're like all other parts of nature, you can't express if you're dead. Like literally, that's what it comes down to. You can't express if you're dead. So this desire that we all have to feel secure in our resources is completely natural, because that's reality. The more secure we are in our resources, the more we can spend time doing other things. The more insecure we are in our resources, the less time we have for self-introspection and understanding ourselves and expressing ourselves creatively and expressing ourselves in relationship and expressing ourselves in our like developing our bodies and developing our minds and developing our creativity and our relationships and all of these things. You see, that's very reasonable. So over time, it started to become more and more, we got into this idea that more resources is better. The more we can control the resources, the more resources we can shore up for ourselves, the better our chances of survival. So what happened was, and this happened a very, very, very long time ago with kings and queens and colonization, which countries going and taking over other countries has been happening. Tribes taking over other tribes has been happening since the dawn of time. Like colonialization is, again, not a recent thing, and white people weren't the first people to do it. that was, again, a natural part of evolution, where a tribe would say, okay, we have access to what we have here, they have access to what they have there. If we take them over, we can control their resources, and then that's double the resources for us, and then maybe even double the workers for us, right? Like this concept of, if we dominate another culture, we get their resources and their people. That came naturally, because we were disconnected from the idea that we are all one. We were only operating in that my tribe is my family, my community is my we, and then everyone else is someone other. And the other tribes, the other races, the other ways of being, they're either a threat to me, or I'm going to dominate them. Like, communication and working together wasn't really a thing. So we started to evolve and develop and go, the more we can conquer, the more we can control the resources, the higher we can get on this social hierarchy, because again, we all need each other to survive. And the more I can dominate as an individual, the more I can have more resources for myself, which makes me feel more secure, like I'm going to be able to express my genetic potential the most, and have luxury and all these things, thinking that that's going to make us happy. And that's how that evolved. And we're still in that right now. We still are living from this idea that if some is good, if enough is good, more is better. And the scarcity mentality that we all have, that's feeding. Like I've talked about why the abundance mentality and the abundance teachings are garbage. Because it's founded on an idea of scarcity. That no matter how much we have, it's not enough. No matter how much we have, it's not enough. It's not secure enough. It's not stable enough. We could always be getting more. We could always be doing more for the sake of more, because what we have isn't enough. And that, again, is a cultural programming that is like the foundational programming that makes all the other programs, it's the Hydra head of all the other programs, came very naturally. Because again, all throughout human history, almost up until the last 100 years, for only a small portion of the world, did we finally step into a place where we got out of the food chain, where we understood weather patterns, where we understood growing patterns, where we understood shelter, we understood all these things enough that for large portions of the population, we have food all year round. We have shelter all year round. We have provision all year round. We can just go to the store and buy food. We can just go and we can just have a house. We can have a job that pays us money, that lets us do, like, the security. We can put money away for retirement. The security for our future. That's very new. And before that, the trauma was, it could all just go away. Everything that we've built, everything that we have, a disease could come through and wipe us all out. A storm could happen and then that's it. Drought for a season and we all die. We didn't have access to enough and a reasonable level of security. So this human trauma that we all have, that more stuff is better, the more I can control, the more I can manipulate, the more I can dominate, the safer and better I am, and the more then I'm going to be able to express my genetic potential, which we're not thinking about, but that's what it's rooted in. Every single human being on this planet is simply fighting to survive because they want to express their potential. And the farther you are from having security, the farther you are from expressing your true self. And now, we live in a capitalist society in the Western world that is founded upon a deep misunderstanding that stuff for the sake of stuff is going to make us happy. And again, I highly recommend that everyone watch The Century of the Self, where after World War II, and especially in America, where we finally got to a place that America had really profited off that war. And America had been profiting off of a lot of things for a very long time, because it was a place that was very rich in resources, and obviously there was slavery that made it possible to amass all of this wealth and this resource, and to do all of these things for essentially not having to pay labor. And so much of the American development happened because of that exploitation and that horrendous way of being. But that's where the wealth essentially came from. And we came into this place of like, the general population is starting to step into no longer being in a state of scarcity, that people had more than they needed. And we all thought that was going to be the thing that made us happy. And then instead of that happening, we came into a place of recognizing that we were having existential crises. And we were looking for meaning and purpose, and we didn't know why we were doing what we were doing. We didn't know why we were where we were, and we didn't understand what was happening. And all of these deeper questions of who am I and what's my impact and what's going on here, what's my identity, started to come up. And rather than us taking that growth step, because that's what that was an opportunity to up-level our consciousness. We were at that breaking point of awareness that this is all there is to life, and then all of a sudden we started seeing that there was more. And rather than going there, we tried to fit that into our current model. So that's when I can sell you identity, I can sell you security, I can sell you meaning and purpose. Started to happen. And that's the cultural conditioning and the program that we're all running right now. Is reality is dictated by other people. Because, again, we came to that very naturally. Codependency in our childhoods. We could not provide for ourselves, so we had to be what our caregivers needed us to be, and that got programmed into our nervous systems. This was not an intellectual exercise. None of us were like, this is what's real for me, this is who I truly am, and I'm just going to choose to shut that down in order to live this thing that my parents want me to be that feels totally horrible to me, just to make myself miserable in 20 years. And to make it so that I don't know who I am and I feel completely lost. No. We did that because the alternative was your parents reject you, you don't live up to expectation, you're not supported, and they're God to you. They are everything to you. They were your place. If they were wrong, first of all, that would have been completely crippling for you to recognize as a child. Right? Most of us didn't start to recognize that our parents were making mistakes until our teenage years. Because until then, like before then, we had such little autonomy that if we were to actually fully recognize that our parents were just fallible humans, that would have been the existential crisis that ended our lives. We couldn't have handled that. So we all had to believe our parents were telling us what was real. And we had to then develop ourselves to fit in to their model of what was acceptable in order to feel safe that we were going to be provided for, because they were everything to us. And their emotional rejection of us felt like death, because again, they provided everything. So we learned from the very beginning that fitting in is the way to live. And then we go out into culture and it's the same thing. That it's in order to have a job, in order to get a mortgage, in order to get a boyfriend, in order to get a partner, in order to get all these things that we think that we need and that we want. We have to be accepted by somebody. We have to get hired. We have to be accepted by the group. There is no just being yourself, getting rejected by everyone, and feeling secure. Because it looks like everything is controlled by somebody and something out there. So we wonder why we're in this place now where we have all these conspiracy theories. where there's so much fear and like I say, theories around the people who are in control. Well, of course we came to that. Because that's how we have been feeling our whole lives, is that like we're not in control. That there's so much that we're not in control of. And who is it that's in control? And how can we dethrone them so that we can have more control? And that makes sense. Because that's been the pattern forever. He who controls the resources controls the people. And we all have a different idea, because we're all very different, of what the right way to run society is, about what we need and what is good and what is right and what is wrong, because we're all individuals and we're all programmed. So everyone thinks everyone else has it wrong. And that if we were to be in control of everything, we would be able to figure it out. But the ultimate truth is that only for you, probably. If you were fully self-sovereign and connected to reality, you could figure out for yourself. But deprogramming what you think is reality and what you think is good for you and what you think is right is the first step. So this is why, again, I'm not here to tell you what to believe about the world, what to believe about the power structures, what to believe about anything. I'm here to say, before you look to go and fix everything out there, to take down the establishment, to whatever, let's first recognize that in order to actually know what we need and what we want, we have to unprogram ourselves from the programming of society. So, and again, we don't recognize that we're running programs. How we start to recognize that we're running programs is that we do things that give us consequences we didn't expect. That means we're running a program. When we try a diet and we expect this outcome and we get it for a little while and then we fall off, or it doesn't work, that's a program. We thought we understood how reality worked and we don't. When we have guilt and shame, we're running a program. Because reality speaks in pain and pleasure only. When we feel like if we are to be rejected by the tribe, if we were to be who we really were, we're going to die because we're going to get fired, we're going to lose this person, we're going to lose that person, that's a program. So coming out of programming isn't about a big awareness. It isn't the Matrix, where someone plugs you into something and then you get your head shaved and you puke and then you're on the ship. That's not how it works. It's a very, 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 very slow process of reconnecting to your feelings. And now here's the big, most important thing to say. For most people, they are not going to wake up from the programming of consciousness right now. Because again, the programs we have, and this is going to be very hard to hear, but this is reality. The programs and the societal structures that we have right now, so if you're listening to me, you probably don't like how society is run. You see a lot of problems with pharmaceutical companies, you see a lot of problems with the banking industry, you see a lot of problems with agriculture, you see a lot of problems with dominance and control and the police and government and education and medicine. You see a lot of problems. And I'm going to bet that your life feels very painful. The more you try to fit into society, the more you try to get a normal job or have normal relationships or eat normal food or do any of these normal things, you physically cannot do it. It hurts. And then you sit there and you wonder why everyone else isn't more upset. Why isn't the world doing more to change this? Because this clearly isn't working. Okay, the reason for that is this. You were born, or you developed, to a level of consciousness that is higher than the aggregate. Okay, so what this means is, the programs of society while being out of alignment with universal perspective. The programs of society while being out of alignment in universal perspective. You see? Yes, it's chaos, it's destruction, it's capitalism run amok. It's in other parts of the world, it's literal tribal warfare, it's genocide, it's fighting over the land, fighting over the resources. It's middle-aged, or it's religion, it's New Age religion, it's relatively low consciousness. And if we just look at it like that, that's where it is. But those structures match the consciousness of the aggregate. Not everyone. There are people who are way ahead of it, there are people who are behind it. But generally speaking, the reason we have the systems we have is because this is what the aggregate is capable of understanding and seeing. It's what they feel, which is mind-blowing for most of us, because to us, these systems are so deeply out of alignment, and we don't know that intellectually. We know that because it feels terrible. We all have anxiety and depression and these physical problems, and we're sicker than usual, and we're more neurotic, and we can't get ourselves to fit in. We have more coping mechanisms, more anxieties, more depressions, more addictions, and we think there's something wrong with us, but it's not that. It's that our consciousness level, because it is higher than the aggregate, means the cultural programmings of the aggregate don't serve our next stage of evolution. So again, if we can understand that everyone is just doing their evolutionary path, most of society is in grade 1. So it's low level. It's literally put one foot in front of the other, let the government tell me what to do, medicine. They're at where they're at because that's where they're at. And is it destructive? Yes. Is it destroying their body? Sure. But number one, they do not feel as dissatisfied in it as you do. They're not noticing the destruction the way that you are. The destruction is happening, but it's not nearly as painful for them as it is for you. Why? Because it is in relative alignment to their level of consciousness. Society is set up to support the relative level of consciousness of the aggregate because it's built by the aggregate. The systems we have are built on what the general population needs and can comprehend right now. So like for instance, a lion does not have the faculties to comprehend unity consciousness. So it eats an antelope and feels no shame and no guilt, no remorse. Why? Because that's in alignment with ultimate reality? Nope. It just murdered something. But it doesn't feel bad about it because it doesn't have the consciousness to feel bad about it. It wouldn't be able to align with the truth of oneness even if it became aware of it. It doesn't have the complexity to do that. Therefore, it does not feel pain for the laws of universal reality it is breaking. It's in relative alignment. That's how it is for humans. We only feel the consequences of our out of alignment behaviors that we are capable of understanding and evolving beyond. Not all humans are equal in our awareness. Not all humans are equal in what we're capable of. So again, the programs that we have, how we think survival works as an aggregate, as a country, so all the different countries, as a global society, is simply based on the majority's consciousness level. this is where we're at. This is how much we can handle. This is how much connection of things we can understand. The people who are running our governments and our money and our medicine and all these things are running from their level of consciousness. They're not evil. They're literally, in a lot of areas, they're underdeveloped. They honestly think that what they're doing is the right thing. Like, even if they're like, it's just the right thing for me, they don't have a level of awareness that lets them understand that if I am hurting the aggregate, I am not serving myself. They might be able to intellectually understand that, but they don't feel it. They don't feel it the way that you feel it. They don't have the actual capacity to learn. And we're going to talk about this in the next video, of what actual learning is, what actual intelligence is. It's not an intellectual thing. We can go and tell a sociopath over and over and over again, you're hurting others, you're hurting others, you're hurting others, and it hurts you to do that. And they can hear it, and they can tell you they understand, and they can say it back to you and all these things, but they don't feel it. They're missing the thing that would actually let them learn that and live in alignment with it. So therefore they don't feel remorse when they go and hurt somebody. That's an evolutionary thing. So the programs that exist are there completely working for the aggregate as their evolutionary path. Because the aggregate is not ready to take responsibility for itself. If those of us who feel like we're in a more enlightened place and we're like, we want to abolish the government and we want to abolish all these things and we want to have these like forward thinking crop practices where we're like nourishing the soil and like doing all of this, and we want to have universal basic income and we want to have social programs, and we can understand that the more everyone is supported, the better society is for everybody. And if we start to take care of each other, everybody plays, everybody wins. That's way too complex for most people. They have no idea what you're talking about. You can go and tell them the benefits of socialism over and over and over and over again. And all they hear is, you're going to take my money and then there's not going to be enough for me and I'm going to die. That's their level of consciousness. Capitalism works for them right now because this is all they can understand. So what is painful for you as someone who's listening to my videos is that your consciousness level is above the current programming. But because it's programmed into your nervous system that to be different than society is to die, and because you have been so disconnected from feeling in your true self that you don't have a relationship with reality, you feel like your two options are fit into society, which feels terrible and like I'm going to die, or try and do something different where I feel completely alone and isolated and like I have no answers and I'm going to be rejected and I'm going to die. That's why we're programmed. Because getting out of programming requires moving through these traumas of understanding that you are not going to find your answers in society. And it's not about rebelling from society. And it's not about rejecting society. It's you are going to have to become your own source of wisdom. You are going to have to become your own source of understanding. And this is going to lead you to doing a bunch of things that you've never seen anyone else do before, that you have no roadmap for, because no one's ever been you before. And the blueprint that works for everyone else, to just get that job, get that security, have those kids, have that house, that's, again, their level of consciousness. So they're going to have their pains, they're going to have their struggles, they're going to have whatever, but it's not going to feel like death to them to live that life, because that's where they're at. Society is set up. The blueprint is set up to support that level of consciousness. And it works for most people. And I know that that's really hard to believe, but it is. If it doesn't work for you, you're going to have to figure it out on your own, and you're going to have to go on your own to figure it out. Which are the two things our nervous system says, no. That got programmed out of us in childhood. Right? Understanding that I could follow my own self, I could make mistakes, and I could learn from it. We don't know how to learn. We don't know how to feel. We don't know how to take a risk, fail, and learn from it. We don't know how to figure things out for ourselves. We don't know how to connect to reality. We're completely entangled in consensus reality. That's all we see is what we've been taught. And it goes against our feeling, but we don't know how to feel. Which is why the next talk we're going to talk about is feeling as an intelligence. And this is why this is what my mystery school is. It's 100% super, 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 super slow. Reconnecting you to your feelings. Reconnecting you to emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. So that you can heal the traumas of rejection and shame and guilt and all of the programs you don't even know are programs. Because you're running programs you don't even see. You don't know that you're running a program. All you know is life hurts no matter what you do. It's because you're programmed. You don't know what your programs are. You don't know what reality is. And it's a long process. But I've simplified it as much as I can that it boils down to self-love. Because again, the more you can make yourself safe, the more your nervous system expands to be able to do all of this. But right now we're all programmed that society has it figured out, or if we leave society, we're going to die. So we're stuck. And if you are at a consciousness level where trying to fit into society is incredibly painful for you, you can't do that. Your evolution is going to have to be in your own hands. And then that's where you have to decondition and deprogram. And everyone else isn't going to. The rest of the world is doing what they are doing right now because that's their level of consciousness right now. And as hard as that is, we got to understand that. It's not wrong for them. As destructive as it is, as chaotic as it is, it's where we're at as an aggregate. So we're not going to change out there. We're going to first become self-sovereign. And that is going to lead you to figuring out how to live your right life within society. And it's going to make you really weird and stand outy. And it's going to be a thing that you've never seen anyone do before. I'm a perfect example of that. You're just going to follow the things that feel like safety to you. The more you connect with your real true self. And see where that leads you. You will create your own reality in a sense. But it's not really. It's just you will step out of the conditioned whatever it is and find truth for yourself. Like your actual self. And it won't be against society. It will be like, okay, I get why society is like that. I get why that works for them. It's not going to work for me. Because we're just at different places. So that's what programming is. It's you thinking you have to fit into society. It's you thinking society knows what the answers are. It's you not knowing how to feel, but rather being stuck in thought. So, again, we're going to explore feeling in the next thing. But if this life is painful for you, you're simply evolved past the aggregate. The current programming that is supporting the evolution of everyone else doesn't support your evolution. That's why it hurts. The programs that are existing, the way the world works right now, is where the world is at. It's their level of consciousness. If it looks chaotic and destructive and crazy to you, it's because you're evolved past it. You're just evolved past it. So, what do you need to start to disconnect from that and to figure out what you need? That's the answer. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. But until then, check out the Mystery School and just know that there's nothing wrong with you and you're not going to change out there. You're going to change your way of being. And then you are going to be the example for the next evolution. And then you will make it easier for the new programs to be built that then support the aggregate getting to where you are. Okay? So that's programming. That's why you don't understand you're in a program, because it feels real. It feels like all this stuff. And it's emotional intelligence that's going to get you out of it. But it's because you are programmed that you have to fit in to survive. That's the program. And so the more we break from that, the more we will find safety and truth. Okay? So sit with that, and we'll talk to you in the next video.